We've all lubricated a chain, right? But have you waxed a chain? Well, today is the day that you find out if you're an anti-waxer. The bike chain is a primary part of the bicycle drivetrain. It connects the gears and carries the energy of your pedal stroke from the cranks to the rear wheel. The chain is probably the piece of your bike that contains the second largest number of overall parts after the rear wheel. It isn't the most complicated, but it isn't so simple either. Your bike chain contains hundreds of metal bits that spend all their time rubbing up against each other. To ensure long life, low wear, and that they work together smoothly, these parts need to be lubricated and kept clean. Proper lubrication helps the parts wear more slowly and allows them to work more quietly. Keeping the chain clean keeps foreign material like sand, dirt, or other bits out. If they get in there and stay there for too long, they can wear down the chain. This can open up spaces that are supposed to be small and make room for even more gunk, accelerating the process. Sticky or oily lubrication products can attract all kinds of gunk. Riding in dusty or dirty conditions, which is what mountain biking is all about, causes lots of dirt to get thrown into that drivetrain. We want a good way to keep that dirt from hanging around. Sure, following the directions and lubricating a chain with products that evaporate prior to use is a great way to prolong your chain's life. But wouldn't it be great if there was a product that wasn't so sticky, so the dirt wouldn't be an issue in the first place? That's where wax comes in. There are many ways to properly wax a chain. The process shown here uses basic materials and excludes kits that are marketed by some companies. This video does not expressly endorse or oppose any kit. We're just trying to show the details of the process. Here's what you'll need to effectively wax your chain. The hot plate. This is used to provide the heat. Get one that has variable heat settings. It doesn't need to go much above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The pot. I bought a cheap stainless pot online. This one was less than $20. It has cladding, which ensures even heat. This one was measured to fit the burner on the hot plate and also has a cool steam vent hole. The wax. I'm using basic paraffin wax, the stuff that you'd use to make candles at home. It's easy to find at hardware stores and it's relatively cheap compared to the specialty chain waxes you see for sale. Aside from a few additives, this is the exact same stuff that those fancy chain wax products use. Wax is available in blocks or beads. It probably doesn't matter which one you use, since you'd be breaking up the blocks to melt them anyway. The hanger. This is used to hang and dip the chain. It keeps your fingers out of the hot wax and gives you an easy way to hang the chain up when it's time for it to drip and cool off. Glass jars. These hold the various solvents used for chain cleaning. Some of these solvents can be corrosive, so make sure you get glass jars. I like how the transparency shows me how well the cleaners are doing their job. Solvents. I use degreaser, mineral spirits, and denatured alcohol to clean the chain. Lubricants. These are designed to refresh the chain after you wax it, a lot like regular chain lube. Be sure to use a lube that was designed for use on a waxed chain. Using oily or solvent-based lubes will damage the wax, requiring more cleaning, and they'll attract more dirt. The ultrasonic cleaner. There are few things that do a better job of coaxing the dirt out of a grimy chain. Useful in a variety of applications, this is a must-have if you want to start with a used chain. The essential parts of this system cost about the same as a chain waxing kit from leading manufacturers. I like this setup because it has an added benefit of being useful with more parts and in more situations than just this one. The most important first step of waxing a chain is starting with a clean chain. Any residual material that may be hiding inside the links will prevent the wax from properly penetrating into the places it needs to be in order to be most effective. New chains usually ship covered with a greasy substance that's there to prevent rust during transport. This is not lube. Sure, you could throw that thing on the bike and ride, and it might just work for a while, but it won't be long before it gets all gunked up. That stuff is super sticky. Previously used chains need to be measured for wear before anything else is done to them. There are plenty of tools for measuring these, but I prefer the 3-point tools as they can be used on a wider variety of chain types. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll be alerted when we release our video on measuring chain wear and stretch. It'll appear in the description below. Remember to also clean up any other parts of the drivetrain that may contact the chain directly. This includes the rear derailleur jockey wheels, the rear cogs, and the front chain rings. Cleaning off the shipping grease, road and trail dirt, or existing lube is the first step in getting a chain prepared for wax. This can be accomplished by using a degreaser or a stripper. I've seen some people use gasoline as a solvent in this scenario, and it seems to work pretty well. Please remember that this process involves dangerous substances. Along with the use of solvents, overheating wax can create flammable vapors. Review and follow necessary safety procedures for the materials you use. Make sure you operate at safe temperatures, wear protective equipment, and work in a well-ventilated space away from open flame. Stay safe. You can use a nylon brush, safe when used with solvents, to scrub the exterior grime off the chain while it soaks. Now it's time to get to work on the inner bits. Any residual dirt or grease that remains inside will keep the wax from making its way into the inner parts of the chain. I use an ultrasonic cleaner to get deep inside the chain. Many people consider this to be the best way to really get in there and release the worst of the dirt. They aren't super expensive. This one was about 45 bucks. And they make a big difference in their ability to penetrate in between the links. You can leave the chain in the cleaner for a while if necessary. Ultrasonic cleaners are designed to use water as their solvent, so feel free to change out the liquid if you want to gauge the progress of the cleaning. If more dirt comes out, then it's not done yet. Go ahead and blast your chain with some compressed air if you have it, or swing it over your head. Just get that water out of there and then let it air dry. After the chain is clean, I like to give it a rinse in a jar of denatured alcohol. This step isn't necessary, but it gives me peace of mind that I'm starting with a completely bare chain. After cleaning the chain, you can pour the solvents back into their container using a coffee filter. Your solvent will be ready for its next use, but without all the grit left over from your last cleaning. Lay your chain out on a flat surface and fold it back and forth, doubling it back upon itself so it takes up less space. It should be roughly square when you're done. Keep in mind that the point here is for it to lay flat in the pot. It should be roughly the same size and shape that'll facilitate that. Thread your hanger through the chain, running it inside the links. It should run in between the link plates and you should be able to pick up the chain, keeping the folded shape when you're done. Set your hot plate to about 150 degrees and add your wax. You'll want to add enough wax so that the chain can be completely submerged. This is usually about 1.5 chain links deep. This is when you would want to include your additives. The preferred options are tungsten disulfide or PTFE, a Teflon powder. You can use both if you want. Typical practice is to add about 10 grams or a tiny bit more than 1 teaspoon's worth. If you use both additives, then use 10 grams of each one. You don't need to heat the wax much beyond 150 degrees. Going higher may penetrate the links a little bit better, but it will leave less of a finish when you're done, since the wax drips off when it cools. Wax melts at just under 100 degrees and becomes flammable at almost 400 degrees. The burner should never get anywhere near this hot when you're melting the wax. Immerse the chain in the wax, lay it down, and make sure it's fully submerged. Should you wax the master link? A lot of people will say no because it might get difficult to install with a thick layer of wax on it. Let the chain soak for about 10 or 15 minutes. Some people like to stir it a bit, moving the chain in the liquid so that the wax soaks deeper into the links. It's a common practice to look for bubbles. As the wax enters the links, it displaces air and the bubbles pop out. When the bubbles are gone, the wax is soaked as far into the chain as it can go. Once the chain has sat long enough, lift it out of the pot and hang it up to cool. I prefer to hang it over the pot so it drips back into the melted wax. Turn off the heat and let it cool for 5 to 10 minutes. After it's cool enough to handle, you'll notice a layer of wax caked onto the outside of the chain. You can remove the chain from the wire and straighten it out. It's going to be really stiff. Some people break each link by hand. This is kind of the oddly satisfying version of chain prep for the ASMR community. People really dig this. The cool wax is far stiffer than any liquid lube you'd normally add to the chain. We need to remove the excess wax from the outside of the chain so that it's left with a thin layer. Don't worry, this is a simple process. In fact, it'll happen on its own if you don't want to do anything to the chain, it just falls off. But doing it this way isn't nearly as messy. It's best to run the chain around a rounded metal rod to shed the majority of the wax off the surface. This opens up the links and gets them worked in just a bit. After the melt, you can store the hardened wax in a baggie and remelt it next time. I like to scrape the bottom just a bit to remove any impurities that may have accumulated during the process. Super simple. Chain installation should be only a little bit stiffer than what you're used to. The first few minutes of riding will feel sluggish. Breaking the residual wax free will feel chunky and slow, but it only has to happen once. After the wax is worked out of the inner parts of the chain and the only thing left is a thin film, then your pedal stroke will be back to normal and you'll be on your way. When the dirt gets kicked up onto the chain, it just falls off again. There's nothing for it to stick to. You won't need to re-wax the chain for several thousand miles. Some say 3,000, some say 5,000. I say keep an eye on your chain and act accordingly. If the chain starts to make noise, then maybe it's time for some tender loving care. The good news is, now that you've already waxed your chain, you only need to re-dip it, soak, and dry. No need to strip off the old material with solvents. A drip wax lube is recommended for use after waxing the chain. Using a regular oil or solvent-based lubrication will degrade the wax and you'll need to re-strip the chain the next time you wax it. Adding the drip wax is as simple as adding a single drop to the chain, one link at a time. Slowly roll the cranks backwards and start dabbing at the master link. This will give you a reference point for where to stop. After applying, spin the cranks a bit and let the lube dry, usually about a half hour. A common practice is to wax 2 chains at the same time. It's pretty simple and prolongs the life of the chain even more. Keep one as a backup, packed away in a baggie, waiting for its day in the sun. When the time comes, swap them out, and at your leisure, recondition the older chain and throw it into the bag for the next rotation. Tips for a waxed chain. Don't store a bike with a waxed chain outdoors. Well, don't store any bike outdoors, especially in wet areas. Water is the enemy. You don't want rust. Use clear wax so you can monitor how dirty it gets over multiple uses. You can also see if more gunk comes out during the chain's waxing. The chain hanger I use is made from an old coat hanger, but you can use shift cables or old spokes, almost anything will work. If powdered lubricants like tungsten disulfide or PTFE rub you the wrong way, you don't need to use them. The wax is the primary lubricant and the additives only make the action smoother. They don't extend the life of the application. That's all there is to it. Waxing a chain can be a bit of work at the start, but it takes a lot less effort to maintain. Waxed chains stay cleaner, longer, and add to the chain's lifespan. As always, ask questions below. Now get out there and ride, and I'll see you when I see you.